Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're tackling the best grapple build for Titans. If you've been paying attention to the sandbox, then you should know that out of every single ability in the game, Grapple is currently the most powerful. Thanks to the way stats work now, and a particularly good artifact, Grapple can one-shot raid bosses. And while the raid boss one-shotting is pretty exclusive to hunters, warlocks and Titans too can make builds that get close to that level of potency. And if you're worried that what I'm going to show you today is going to get nerfed, Bungie has already went through and patched what they felt was too strong with Grapple, meaning we should be good to use and abuse what's left over, which is more than enough. So today we'll be looking at the Titans' best Grapple build that pairs survivability, lethality, and even team support to give us one of the best builds across the entire game. And while this type of build was once meta in the past, it's now been updated to include a bunch of new sandbox tools. Now, before we begin, I want to remind you there is a dim link down below, that way you can easily recreate this build yourself. There's also timestamps down there too, which can be used to take you straight to the information that you're looking for. And then if you enjoy this type of content, you like informative Destiny videos, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an upload of mine. And if you're a returning viewer, come say hi by joining the Discord server, also linked below. Now, actually diving into the build, we begin with our Grapple. Unlike most of my builds, I want to begin by showing you the baseline. In the firing range, we can use our Grapple, which gives us two numbers totaling to 986 damage. Also, shout out to the firing range numbers actually being correct now. Besides that, there's not much else to say about Grapple right now. Instead, we immediately want to start buffing it. And this is done most easily with our exotic armor piece of choice, Synthos. Now, I will also talk about Wormgod's Caress in a minute, but first, Synthos description. It reads, when you're surrounded, gain increased melee and super damage, as well as improved weapon handling and reload speed. Taking a look at this, the first and most important aspect is our melee damage increase. As seen on Carl, our base melee damage deals 199. When we move over to in between three of them, this will increase by 165% and now deal 525 damage. And this, of course, propagates to our Grapple and other melee abilities as well, with the titular Grapple dealing a 986 at base to now dealing 2,610 damage for simply being near three enemies. As for the super damage, without Synthos procced, we deal 568 damage on a light attack, which we can spam. Then when surrounded, we deal 851 damage. That is a 50% damage bump. And out of all of our roaming supers, Blade Fury here actually does quite substantial damage. But outside of melee increases, we also get some handling and reload, which isn't quite impactful enough for me to make a big deal out of. But with Synthos covered, I want to touch on them versus Wormgod's Caress. The Wormgod's Caress exotic can actually dwarf Synthos when it comes to increased damage. Synthos caps at plus 165%, and Wormgod's caps at plus 400%. Obviously, bigger is better, so why not use Wormgod's? Well, the decision is made because of the limitations. Would you rather 165% for infinite time, or plus 400% for 4 seconds? Wormgod's needs kills to stay active, Synthos doesn't. And that ease of use is why I opt Synthos. But for any min-maxers out there, feel free to swap these two out. And if you're just bored of Synthos, then 100% give Wormgod's Caress a try. It can be better. Now on from our exotic armor, we have exotic weapons. And for this build that I want you to use, I recommend no exotic weapon. The Navigator is a default choice for Grapple builds, but I'll talk about that when optimizing the build with other weapon options. Right now, I want this build to be how you can get the most damage out of your grapples as easily as possible, and an exotic weapon isn't actually necessary for that. So instead, we'll go straight into the subclass. Starting with the super, it is of course forced to be Blade of Fury due to there only being one strand super. Bungie, please give us more. For our class ability, we run Rally Barricade because towering does pretty much nothing for us inside of PvE. And our melee is also forced to be Frenzy Blade because we only have one option. Although of all melees to be forced to use, this is not a bad one. It does massive damage, it severs enemies, and it has 3 charges. And then our grenade is, well, you guessed it, it's Grapple. But now onto our aspects. Some veteran players might remember this selection well. Our first is Banner of War. This aspect activates by getting a kill with a melee, a finisher, or a sword. Once active, it will pulse, healing us and allies while constantly giving us a melee damage buff. And then it can be extended and enhanced by getting kills with the buff active. Looking at this in-game, the activation is most simply done by getting a melee kill. With this, we can see the buff on our screen, and in third person, we can actually see our strand flagpole on our back. This will pulse intermittently, healing us and any nearby allies, and we can speed up that pulse by simply getting kills with it active. we will go from ×1 Banner of War to ×4 after about 15 kills. Now, as for the melee increase, which is another step towards grapple nuking, this takes our base melee from where we last saw it at 525 to 723. So this added plus 100% to the equation, and our grapple now deals 3,596 damage. So with just simply having Synthos and Banner, we are dealing plus 265% melee damage. Banner also increases our super damage by 40%, leading to our light attacks now dealing 1,021. Which is very commendable. But onto our next aspect, we have Into the Fray. This aspect causes our tangles and our super to apply Woven Mail to us and our allies. It also makes our melee come back quicker when we have that buff. In game, we can see the application of Woven Mail in the form of this green ball that pulses from the location of a destroyed tangle. Each pulse gives us 10 seconds of Woven Mail, which as a reminder is 40% damage resist. And then with Woven active, we can see our melee coming back 300% faster. And given the nature of multi-charge abilities, our third charge comes back in just about 10 seconds. The 100% Woven Mail uptime and increased melee regen is very important to this build. But now onto the fragments. First is Thread of Fury. This fragment will regen a chunk of our melee when dealing damage with a tangle. After that, we have Thread of Generation, which makes it so all damage we deal will generate a bit of grenade energy. This is actually totally busted, even years after Strand's release. Then after that is Thread of Warding, which is some redundancy on Woven Mail, causing orbs to give us that buff for 5 seconds. And then lastly is Thread of Continuity, which makes our Strand debuffs last longer. Mainly, that affects the Unravel from Grapple and Sever from our Frenzied Blade. And moving on from our subclass, we should talk weapons before looking at armor stats and all that. There are no necessary weapons for this build, but there are absolutely ways to optimize it. My main recommendation is a 1-2 punch hand cannon. By using either of these, you can buff up your grapples even more. Like here, we just saw our grapple deal about 3,600 damage. Adding in a simple hand cannon shot, it now deals 4,480 damage minus a bit from the hand cannon itself. This hand cannon offers a 75% increase, which gets added to the equation and comes out to a total of plus 335%. Previously, before Edge of Fate, I would never recommend anyone to run 1-2 punch, but now you can do so with infinite ammo, so it makes no sense not to. As for the second weapon optimization, you can run the Navigator earned from the Ghosts of the Deep dungeon. I apologize to anybody I misled in my last video. This weapon can put down grapple points with its catalyst, which means our highest damage ability has no cooldown. You can put out DPS much higher than a heavy weapon with this setup, but I would really only recommend this if you know you'll be facing tanky bosses. Most times, instead of Navigator, I run Mint Retrograde, and I use armor mods in my subclass to regen my grenade that way. Not to mention, a well-placed tangle is exactly the same as a grapple point. But now onto our armor stats, there are two things here that matter: the grenade and melee stat, because we want to regen both of those as quickly as possible, and then when those stats are above 100, we get multiplicative increases to damage. But of the two, we want to max out grenade first because it scales to plus 65% damage versus melee's 30%. Ideally, you have both above 100, but don't sacrifice grenade for a bit of melee. To give you an idea of how powerful it is, up to this point in the video, I've had 141 grenade stat for plus 26.3% damage. Increasing that to 171 and getting a 46% increase, we can now look at our grapple's damage, and here we are dealing about 5,200. That's almost 1,000 more raw damage just for increasing our stats. But if you can get grenade to 200 and melee above 100, you'll be cooking. And yes, you can use fonts to do that. As for the rest of the stats, get some super in there, and really, who cares about everything else? Now for the armor mods, on the helmet, run a special finder and a siphon for whatever weapon you use. For arms, use a heavy-handed, so melee and grapple kills spawn orbs, and double impact induction to refund grapple on melee hits, including grapple itself. For chests, run resists and ammo gen mods. For legs, run a Better Already to regen health on orb pickup, and Innervation to get a chunk of grenade from orb pickup, and then an Absolution to get a chunk of everything on orb pickup, but mainly so it double dips into grenade regen. Then on our class item, we have a special finisher for special ammo on demand, a powerful attraction to suck up orbs with our barricade, and a bomber to get a bit of grenade back when casting barricade too. And then the last bit to cover before our gameplay loop is the artifact. Within, there are two mods that massively boost this build. The first is Tightly Woven. This perk increases our grenade and class stat by 20 when we have Woven Mail. That means above 100, free grenade damage. The second and main perk is Shield Crush. When we have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or an Overshield, our melee does increased damage. And when Radiant or Amplified, we deal increased grenade damage. And yeah, Grapple counts as both, meaning we'll always benefit from the increased melee damage granted by Woven Mail. And when adding the artifact into the equation, one combo at max stacks deals about 6,000 damage, which, coming from our starting number for Grapple of 986 damage, that is a 511% increase. And if you really wanted to look at what this build can do, then should you get max melee and max grenade with the use of fonts, factoring in those multiplicative increases, this build will cap out at plus 618% damage. So in our build with suboptimal stats, we actually aren't even missing that much. But let's be honest, seeing the numbers and actually using it are two different things. So let's cover the gameplay loop now. To begin, we want Banner to start stacking up and for us to get a Tangle. The best way to do that is by either raw grappling or using a Frenzied Blade on a trash ad. Simply by being near enemies, we'll get Synthos to proc, which is one of our biggest buffs. Upon scoring that first melee/ability kill, it'll spawn a Tangle that we can either use as a free grapple or to give us Woven Mail when destroyed. From this point on, we'll be healing thanks to Banner, and all of our melee damage will be increased. Use grapples and Frenzied Blades at will. Orbs and Tangles will be sources of Woven Mail, which is DR, but it also triples our melee regen. On the grenade side of things, any and all damage we do will be regenning it on top of getting chunk regen when placing barricade or picking up an orb. The uptime on both our grenade and melee leads to Tangles spawning on cooldown and nukes going off left and right in the form of grapple melees. If at one point you face an enemy and don't have grapple, just shoot it with your normal weapons to generate your grapple back. Remember to proc a 1-2 punch before grappling anything tanky, and it'll likely die in one hit. Also, remember that coming out of Grapple, you can combo into a 1-2 punch buffed Frenzied Blade as a finisher. Your melee ability also does good damage. And then the last reminder is that your super really does put out a ton of damage, especially when buffed by Banner and Synthos, so don't forget to use that. And you can also use the benefit of coming out of super, resets all cooldowns, making it a good option to pop if the loop drops. It all really is quite simple. Melee something, grapple more things, repeat. And if you're in a boss fight, stack up ads and then place down a navigator point optionally and spam grapples until whatever boss you're facing is dead. And with that, thank you for getting this far into the video. Remember, there is a dim link down below for your convenience. And if you want to support me, support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription goes a very long way. If you want to support me and support the channel, but you can't think of a comment down below Shrek. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.